everyone, and welcome back to another World of Tanks console video. My name is Xenozach, and today we'll be taking a dive into what's to come over the 2018 period of the World of Tanks console lifespan. So for those of you who are a little bit interested in this topic, let's dive into one of the more controversial things that happened last year with World of Tanks console in the last few months of 2017. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, this was the release of the Swedish line, and more so in the month of December with the introduction of the Tier 10 light tanks. Now, one of the reasons I want to bring this topic up is because I want to show you how close these releases were on console, and this is something that you have to speculate when you're looking at what to expect in 2018. We'll get there, no worries, we just have to work our way through this. So you can clearly see that the Swedish release was dated here on the 2nd of November for the entire Swedish line being released. Of course, led by the Sabaton tank, that was the premium tank, released in the month of November for the line, introducing the World of Tanks console players to the everlasting heavy turreted autoloader, such as the Kranvagn, or the Emil 1, Emil 2, and the Kranvagn, and the console players, of course, to the siege mode mechanic that is on the Tier 8 UDES 03, the Tier 9 the Stridsvagn 1030, and the Tier 10 the Stridsvagn 103B, the siege mechanic being very iconic in these tank destroyers. And just to bring it up again, this was released on November 2nd. We had previously gotten the Stridsvagn M42/-57 Alt 82, the Tier 6 premium medium tank, just a month before, along with the Stark Stridsvagn S1. So just to show you that the content released towards the end of the month, or the end of the year, was being very pushed out very aggressively by console developers. With that being said, I honestly thought that this was going to be the last big update for the 2017 year. However, Wargaming decided to make a push, and probably a controversial one, as by not releasing or giving any players heads up, they introduced the top tier light tanks. This is the introduction of the Tier 8 light tanks and the rebalancing and reworking of the light tanks lines for each nation, as well as introduction to a certain few almost a month after that on December 6th. Now, the reason this became controversial for them was because, with no prepared or pre-warning as to the introduction of those players that were grinding through any of the Tier 8 light tanks to get up to the Tier 8 medium, such as the French AMX 1390 going up to the Lorraine 40T, the Batchat 12T, the Batchat 12T AP, the Tier 9 medium, or the AMX 30, I don't want to say the B, the AMX 30 prototype, which was the Tier 9 medium as well, were kind of set back, as in the fact that the AMX 1390 moved up to Tier 9, as did a lot of the other Tier 8 light tanks, and the 1390 became its own line, moving up to Tier 9, researching into the 13105. A lot of players were confused and a little bit annoyed at the fact that they had just invested a multitude of experience on the tank to unlock their Tier 8 medium or Tier 9 mediums, and being pushed over into a light tank branch that they didn't really necessarily want to be in. However, that did give them a head start on the amount of experience needed with their Tier 10 light tanks. Of course, if you don't know what the Tier 10 light tanks were, it is the T100LT for the Russians, the XM552 Sheridan, the Rheinmetall Panzerwagen, the AMX 13105, and the WZ1321. Along with some newer light tanks, the LTG, which became the new Tier 7, the LTTB moved up to Tier 8, the T-71 CMCD, which became the new Tier 7 along that light tank line, leading up to the Tier 8. M41 Walker Bulldog, the HWK-12 or the Hawk, more notably, became the new Tier. Did it become the new Tier 9? No, that became the new Tier 8. The RU-251 was moved up to Tier 9. The Batchat 12T became the brand new Tier 8. Then moving into the AMX 1390 and the 13105. And the Chinese light tanks were kind of the only ones that ended up getting a little bit okay, because the WZ-132 remained the Tier 8 light tank and introduced the WZ-132A as a Tier 9 and the WZ-132-1. Now, the reason I bring this up is because some players had already kept their Tier 8 light tanks and were grinding out experience because they were aware that with Swedish tanks being introduced, you would eventually, by following any of the PC stats, be going into the Tier 10 lights as a part of that that same line, as far as what the developers take in from PC as they upgrade to their server version. And the server version will become important. We'll go over that a little bit later. But again, the console developers, Wargaming, kind of felt a little bit of the community backlash, as a lot of people were not expecting this in the last month of December, and I personally kind of felt that it would have been better to introduce it as the bigger update for 2018, giving January a little bit more spruce to do, or bringing more incentive to bring players back in 2018, and ending off with Swedish play. The Swedish in 2017 would have probably been a lot better. However, with that being said, even though I was one of the few people that did get a jump on being able to have the Tier 9 light tanks, in some cases, the Chinese being the only exception because I don't like the Chinese tanks that much, I was ahead of the game because I keep up with a lot of PC stuff. For a lot of players that don't, I'm going to help you now in keeping up with what to expect over the course of this year in 2018. Now, one of the things I always do whenever I join Rybot01 on her community platoon sessions, whenever she has a developer, is always ask the question, what server version of PC have we caught up to? Now, in one of the last ones that she had done, Max Chaos 24 had joined her, and being that he was probably someone more knowledgeable about that, I made sure to have that be my first question. And right away, he said that we were at server version 9.17. Now, that is important to keep in mind here as we go over the next few topics of this. Keep that number 9.17 in your head. For those of you who are PC players, you already kind of figure where this is going. For console players, keeping track, I'm going to give you guys a quick heads up as to what to expect. So with that being said, here are the releases that PC had from their 9.18 to the end of 2017. This will give you a full heads up on what to expect over the course of the year, as because we are on server version 9.18, PC this year is going to be heading into their actual 1.0 version of World of Tanks, but their current version being, I believe, 9.20.2 at current of a recording of this video. So 9.18, this is what you can expect in our next update, or our next big server jump. Now, keep in mind here, I just want to point this out, anything that I present to you here is only partially informative in a sense, because all the stuff that I go over are not necessarily being looked at in the server version that we will get of that over the course of this year. So although you see all-around SPG revision that a lot of players have been wanting in 9.18, that does not necessarily mean that we of the console players will actually get that. But let's get started here. So 9.18 all-round SPG revision revolved around the artillery class being somewhat reworked, as a lot of players on PC were complaining, and I know a lot of console players have these same complaints, is that I don't like being one-shotted by artillery. SPGs have been a thorn in the community side for a while now. Whether you drive them, think of poor accuracy and frustratingly long reload times, or sent right back to the garage by a shot that came from out of nowhere. However, regardless of how mind-numbing and discouraging it can be at times, Artie belongs in the game. It just needs a thorough revision to help claim its rightful place on the team and on the battlefield. And it's getting that in 918. Now, if you don't know what they actually did, here's just a quick look through of what actually happened in their 918 version. They limited the number of SPGs from 5 that we currently have, and that they had previously, to 3. And if you want to keep reading this while I'm going through, I'll just scroll past it slowly. So basically, the reason that developers on consoles said that they don't like this idea of limiting the number of SPGs is because there are certain medals associated with this, with being able to kill 5 artilleries in one game, 4 artillery, or what is it, 5 and 3 artillery in one game, and that is tied to that, to those medals and the number that you see in game. However, PC decided to just rework that, and being that, I don't remember the exact medal names, but instead of the requirement being 5 for the higher one, it became 3, and the requirement for the first one being kill 2. So whether or not the developers decide to go that route, we'll have to see, but as they have said time and time again, they don't really see it as something that they want to introduce to console players. Revised firing parameters. Large caliber guns coupled with the high penetration values of AP and heat shells allowed SPGs to pierce thick armor, usually dealing fatal damage. This scenario forced draws and base camping. No one wants to be in a game where they barely get to play. Players would rather sit in an already safe spot and never move than be destroyed with full health. At the same time, chances of landing a nice shot with an Artie's notorious accuracy, long reload time, and bad dispersion used to be rather low. You choose a perspective, direction, waited for the enemy to show up, aimed at a moving target or missed in the most cases, and you had to wait for another opportunity to shoot. If the story repeated, it made you seriously consider never playing Artie again. So in this case, they decided to actually lower the penetration they lowered the heat, removed all AP and heat from artillery, and gave it the HE, or I believe the larger splash radius HE. I'm not too sure, let's see. To lower the chance of being severely crippled, if not outright destroyed by SPGs, we significantly reduced the penetration and damage per shot for HE shells, while also removing AP, APCR, and heat shells from them. Of course, one-shots are still possible if the shell lands on the target and hits the ammo rack, but the chances of it happening are close to 0 now. To improve gun handling, we decrease SPG's dispersion on the move and their reload time, while also improving aiming time and accuracy. It no longer feels like a lottery. You spend far less time preparing for your shot, know where the shell will land, and are certain that stun all vehicles unlucky enough to be in the blast radius, whether your shell hits one of them or not. In other words, you have a better chance to meaningfully contribute to the team's efforts. And we'll go over that mechanic, as you've probably seen, stun mechanic. The all-new stun mechanic is an instrumental in reshaping Artie into efficient team players. Now, tanks in the Artie burst radius, we are talking about 122mm and larger caliber HE shells, have their characteristics temporarily weakened. It means that SPGs can help turn the tide of battle by supporting the assault from afar, and they can provide their team with a few precious seconds to break defensive lines and catch the enemy by surprise. As for the other camp, Arties won't kick you out from the game in a single shot, the way it did previously. Now the shell burst causes shell shock to your tank's crew, which worsens the vehicle's mobility, accuracy, and reload time for a brief period, and the stun duration passes, you can fight on. So I don't remember exactly how long the stun time, their stun duration. Let's see if it mentions the exact number. So I guess the maximum amount of stun time that you can receive is 16 seconds, but can vary depending on the type of caliber. Now, one of the things that I won't keep diving into this, if not this video will become very long. One of the things that the developer said is that they do not like the fact that the stun mechanic exists in general, because or in their case, they would rather be one-shotted and being able to get out that game, getting another game, rather than have your crew feel almost nerfed. And I can understand this in a sense. I know a lot of people will find that controversial, but I can understand their reasons for not. Now, I don't remember if it was in 9.18 that they also introduced the idea of reusable consumables, but again, I'll bring this up in a second. I'm just scrolling through here to make sure. Yep, 9.18, the multi-use consumables. Starting in 9.18, you can use as many repair kits, fire extinguishers, and first aid kits per battle as you require to keep the fun going. Let's say you use the repair kit in the first few minutes of the battle, then you're lucky enough to take damage to your ammo rack right after that and use the first aid kit, only to take another hit in the gun in the past. This would handicap you for the rest of the match. Now you just need to find a safe spot and wait 90 seconds for the repair kit's cooldown to end, and you can restore the damaged module and fight on with 100% effectiveness. Multi-use consumables won't make your spending skyrocket, no matter how many times you activate it in any of the three in the battle. When it ends, you'll only have to pay the regular costs, whether you use the repair kit just once or 10 times. It'll cost you 3,000 credits. And they replenish automatically during the battle. Just keep in mind, once you use it, you'll have to wait 90 seconds in order to get a new one. Now, this will probably be one of the topics that we will have to bring up with Wargaming, because if you guys don't remember, earlier this year they tried to introduce, and I believe this was around May or June, a reusable consumable to console to test, in a sense, what health regen would be on tanks. Now, because it was going to be a reusable consumable, a lot of players decided that they did not want that in the game, and pointed out to Wargaming that the higher tier tanks with the massive health pools would become too overpowered or too overbearing and disrupt the game, because they will then regen majority of their health back, or the percentage that was specified, I don't remember the exact number, into the to those tanks, which would then give them an advantage when having to when the consumable itself would become reusable. However, they pointed out, again, this is from the console developers, that they pointed out that we have the option of carrying two consumables instead of the two consumables per consumable. So you could have two repair kits, two med kits, two large med kits, or two large repair kits, or any of the 100 octane, 105 octane type like that, but you're only limited to one food. This kind of makes me feel a little bit annoyed, because they misinterpreted why we didn't want that consumable versus the multi-use consumable that PC had. Reusable consumables, in a sense, are a lot better. If you play World of Warships, you will note that the gun or ammunition on their case actually doesn't have a counter ammunition number, because the ammunition is reusable. It constantly just reloads and you fire. I don't remember if there's a cost to that, but in that sense, with PC, you could constantly use you'd have more than one chance to be able to use your consumable, and I'd like to see, World of Tanks console itself adapt this idea. And I guess with that, we'd have to be pushing more on being able to introduce that more than what their original idea of a reusable consumable was. However, rather than staying on this any longer, just to point out that they did have a few other stuffs, and I'm not going to keep going into that. That is the all-around SPG revision. Moving on, also in 918 they addressed the state of matchmaking, and they made improvement to the matchmaker itself. Now, if you're not familiar with this, again, don't be alarmed. This is the way that their new matchmaker had been redesigned to work, with 3 top tier tanks, such as tier 10s in this case, 5 middle tanks, or the tier 9s, and 7 bottom tier tanks. This way, it didn't favor one side too many and tried to keep the level of the matchmaking fairly fair, rather than getting sometimes some lopsided with 5 top tiers and versus this 3, and then you would get on one side majority tier 8s, while this side might only get 2 or 3, and it kind of makes it a little bit unbalanced as far as their matchmaking. This is how they decided to go. On a 2-level matchmaking, they decided to go with 5 top tiers and 10 middle tiers with no lower tier. The 1 tier below will be majority of that game. And you have, of course, the 1-level battle where, and if you haven't seen this before, it is super rare. I remember back when I was playing when the T29 was super popular, where you would go into a game and your entire game was T29s. That was a fearful battle, it really was, and it really showed how much people loved that T29. But you basically have one of the entire tier. You will meet nothing above or below in that case. Most of this will revolve around the tier 10s, more because a lot of players now, being that the game has been out for so long, have a lot of the top tier tanks. But we are not sure if console will be getting this. Hopefully it does, because I would like to see this a little bit more balanced in that sense to the matchmaking as it is currently, because right now it feels a little bit, even with the introduction of the light tanks, feeling a little bit wobbly as far as it goes in balance. So that was that. Next we move on to probably the biggest controversy the World of Tanks PC has had, the Chrysler K Grand Finals. And if you don't know what incident I'm looking at, just search the Surfosh incident, because this pretty much transpired within a matter of 2 weeks. This was probably the biggest controversy PC World of Tanks has ever had, and to those of you who know of this, don't spread anything else. But hopefully we will have a more balanced Chrysler K Grand Finals when it is introduced to console. More than likely the tank will come like that. If it isn't, well, you know, Surfosh might have a second opportunity in that sense, to decide to come over to console and rage for the rest of us, or I'm pretty sure the community will give their thorough and honest feedback. Moving on, we have the introduction of 919, which, one of the things I don't like is that they don't have this on dates. Oh, never mind. 919 came around May 5th of 2017. That's just to show you that console has made a huge stride in the past year to catch up to the current state of World of Tanks on PC. And I said that in my Swedish release video because the Sabaton was just introduced, I believe, it was introduced within a year. Not even a year, it was a few months. The Sabaton tank was one of the first tanks that was introduced very closely in that respect, and that was because they had the licensing and were able to introduce it to console along with the Swedish tech tree. So, 919 introduced improved equipment and directives. So, During the 919 Common test to it, a few tankers put some serious work into climbing the ranked battles ladder to fight increasingly challenging opponents. Before the battle gets too heated, and it sure will when we get the ranked battle beta season kicks off, let's take a breather to highlight how you could use bonds you rack up in the mode. You can spend bonds on directives and improved equipment available exclusive with this currency. These new items will come in handy in random and ranked battles, clan wars, and tournaments alike, boosting vehicles and crew efficiency. Let's dig deeper into the details, shall we? I don't know why I read that exactly as it was. So, if you don't know what this is, this was the introduction as a reward system to the ranked battles that PC had gotten. Improved equipment would be the eventing system is by getting higher into the ladder, you earn more bonds, and that is the currency, which is the only way you can purchase any of the improved equipment. Now, this improved equipment is a overall bonus. A higher bonus stat than the current ones we have, and I can actually show you that right away. But just to quickly go through it, the eventing system adds 7.5 to all crew skills. The extended spare parts kit cuts repair speed by 40%. Stabilizer equipment lowers dispersion during movement and rotation. The vertical stabilizers by 25%. The innovative loading system cuts load time by 12.5%. The wear-resistant gun laying drive reduces aiming speed by 12.5%. The experimental optic boosts view by 12.5 up to 445 meters. And you can see that they became highlighted to differentiate from the base equipment that you can equip to your tank. Now, there was a big thing about this because it is the bonded equipment that you have could also be carried over and used on your tanks, in the normal matchmaking. So a lot of people thought that because you were already a great player, this would help you become an even better player when using these these equipment on your tanks. However, I don't know if that became the case because I never really double checked on any of the info or feedback that players gave for this, but that's just to show you that that was what it was. And just to give you a quick look on that, I can actually show you this on a tank. So let's just take the 113 for example. You have a choice of toolbox, binocular, telescope, coated optics, camouflage net, enhanced torsion bars, 5+1 ton 5+ ton class, improved ventilation class 3, large caliber tank gun rammer, and enhanced gun laying drive, wet ammo rack class 2, and the fill tanks with the CO2 vertical stabilizers. Now, that is the standard equipment that you can have on your tanks. With the bonded equipment, you can see that it goes up a little bit further. Extended spare parts kit. While the toolbox give you a plus 25 to repair speed, the extended spare parts will give you a plus 40%. The coated optics will give you a plus 10% view range up to 445, but the experimental optics gives you a plus 12.5. Now you can actually stack these, which was one of the things I noticed a lot of PC players did, where you can stack, let's say your large tank gun rammer with the bonded gun rammer. So I don't know why they didn't show that in this one. Maybe it's in a different one. But you can see that 12.5 on the gun laying drive is better than the 10. Even if it's so slightly, this does affect the overall. And I can show you that just by simply adding them. So by just adding the, well, not gun rammer, we'll go coated optics. The view range goes up to 440. Now, the next one would be the gun laying drive. You can see the aim time goes from 2.68 to 2.44. And the last one, well, the toolbox I can't really show you, but I'll just keep my word for it, it does. Now you see how it goes up to 440. You can then kick that up to 450 by just using the bonded equipment, or 2.39 on the aim time by using the bonded equipment again. However, if you didn't realize, you can also stack that with the non-bonded equipment variant of the on the tank. This will then lead to an increase from 400 using both the bonded equipments for coated optics to 495 when stacking both tanks. And that's just a quick look into that. Let's go back here. So directives were introduced along with approving equipment. Bonds can get you special personal reserves called directives, 6 for equipment and another 9 for crew. Once activated, they are good for one battle depending on the type. They bump a vehicle's combat parameters, boost crew skills and perks you trained, or temporarily enable those you haven't trained yet. Equipment directives increase the bonus currently mounted equipment grants to a vehicle's parameters. Let's say you equip the tank gun rammer, stabilizer, and coated optics. The next step would be activating one out of the 3 directive types that go into these equipment types. And I don't exactly know how this goes on, but that's just to basically say that it would increase it even more, as far as it describes there. But that is the improved equipment and directives. I'm not going to take a deep dive into that, but moving forward, because this video will become really long as I'm noticing right now. So 919 was here, introduced on May 31st, it seems right here, which introduced the brand new ranked battle mode that was exclusive to tier 10 vehicles. By testing your metal in this mode, you can earn a new type of currency, which is bonds, which you can snag you some rather sweet prizes. So the improved bonds and equipment became a lot more easier to earn if you performed very well in the ranked battles mode. And you can see right there, the 919 was covering, we were covering over there, also introduced some extra stuff, interface improvements, which we probably won't get, and small enhancements to their overall crew setups over here. So after that, they quickly moved on to 920. From China with love, meet the new tank destroyers. So the Chinese tank destroyers made their way onto PC, starting with the low tier, the T26GFT, the MG30 or M3GFT, the SU76GFT, and that would be the tier 1, 2, 3, and 4. The mid tiers being the tier 560GFT, the WZ131GFT, the tier 6, the tier 7 being the T34-2GFT, and the tier 8, is this the tier 8? The WZ111-1FT. I think this is the premium if I remember right. 5, 6, 7. No, that's tier 8. The high tiers being the tier 9 WZ111GFT and the tier 10 being the WZ113GFT. So that was just the normal tier 8. So if you don't know, that the tier 10 or the Chinese tank destroyers were actually something that was exclusive to the Chinese server because they're almost independently run. They just run war gaming for all the tanks. They came up with the Chinese tank destroyers. Now, it took PC quite a while so that they can get this. However, I believe this was existent for like the past year on the Chinese server, and Wargaming finally decided to add this to the current version of PC. However, I don't know if we will see 920 within the year, but it's more than likely. That's something for you to look forward to. You'll be grinding all the way from tier 2, I believe this is the tier 2, the T26GFT, going all the way up to the tier 10, the WZ113GFT. So there's a bulk of free experience that you could probably save from now until the introduction of 920. Moving on, we have the first Polish tank available that they introduced, which was introduced on August 3rd through September 5th, which is on August 2nd, 1944, during the Warsaw Uprising, Polish troops captured 2 Panzerkampfwagen and 5 Panther G tanks. One of these was nicknamed Poodle. Yes, that's right, Poodle. Now you can buy this tank in 3 different bundles. Take it for a walk. So the Polish tank was basically a premium variant of the Panther, the Tier 7 German tank. And it is actually a good addition that they had. However, this was the only Polish tank I believe they received throughout the year, and in the 2018 year they should receive the Tech Tree, and I believe Quickie Baby talked about them saying that the Polish tanks was actually going to come with a new niche mechanic, kind of like the Swedish being more known for their siege mechanic. The Polish tanks might have something similar. However, I don't know anything about any of the specifics on that, but that's just introducing that. Next, we move into 920's Grand Battles mode. Now, if you don't know what Grand Battles is, keep in mind we don't know if we'll actually ever see this on console, because the player base for console is a lot lower than it is on PC. Grand Battles was a mode introduced that increased a 30-player 30v30. I believe it's 30v30. Nope. Let's see. This new format available in random battles and blends the classic battle, a new larger arena, and teams of 30 all battling it out in tier 10 vehicles. We're sharing more details on it to get you ready to rock when you hit the battlefield. So it was a 30v30 match, only limited to tier 10 vehicles, with the Grand Battle being a standard encounter or assault modes on the Nebelberg map. So keep in mind that again, PC has a much larger player base than console does, so whether or not we'd actually be able to have a Grand Battles mode in general seems a little bit far-fetched for us, but it's something that you yourself can keep hoping for, or we can all hope for, because I would love to be able to increase the number of players we go against. And if you want to know more about the Grand Battles, I can cover this in a lot more greater detail. Just comment down below and let me know if you'd like me to dive a little bit deeper. However, this is just a quick look over it, as again, this video will be very long. Nebelberg is the largest map that they had introduced ever onto the PC version of World of Tanks, and I believe if they do that the same for console, it will still be the largest map, although I don't know what the current largest map is for console. That's a little bit of a toss-up. I'm not too sure. They did again introduce with that Grand Battles mode some revisions to their medals, and again I can go over that in greater detail, but just know that for as far as the overview goes, the mode will still include the standard encounter assault mode. We need 30 versus 30, 30 players on each side, limited to only tier 10 vehicles in the Grand Battles, and the only map that was introduced with this was Nebelberg. The objectives is still the same: capture the enemy base or destroy all enemy vehicles. Moving along, this is something that I know a lot of players will probably want to start prepping for, as this was the French TD's Tier 10 reshuffle. Now, just a quick talk about this. Whenever they say reshuffle, just to give you a heads up, console does not want to take out any tanks that are currently in the game. So when I say remove, I will also point out in the fact that while PC removes tanks and makes them a premium variant, we tend to keep them in the branch and just branch it off. The best example of this would be the Conqueror now having 2 tier 10s in its current branch, going to either the tier 10 Chieftain heavy tank or the tier 10 FV215B. Keep those tanks in mind, as we'll come back to those. So the The update gives the AMX 50 Foch 155 a special vehicle status with all its benefits, opening up a spot at tier 10, which the AMX 50 Foch B is warming up to fill it right away. Effectively a revised version of once formidable old-timer, this new top-tier French TD sports thicker side armor and packs a 6-round 120mm autoloader with 400 alpha damage. If this has you excited, then read it for a review on the new French TD and the reason behind the top-tier reshuffle. So it's no surprise that the AMX 50 Foch 155 was getting replaced on PC, as honestly it was just an underwhelming, after it had been nerfed, it became a little bit underwhelming compared to any of the other tank destroyers that were currently in the game. That also being said, this came after the reshuffle of the Waffle being removed from PC and the Grilly 15 taking its place. Now on console, we still have the Waffle, and again, as explained earlier with the Conqueror, the Panzer IV now has two tier 10s that it can go into, either the Waffenträger auf E100 or the Grill 15, your choice as far as which tier 10 you want to do. As I said, the developers have stated time and time again that they don't like removing tanks from a game, and just because PC decides to remove it doesn't mean that we will ever do that on console. So the 155 was replaced with the Foch 50B, which became a tier 10 6-round autoloader, similarly to that of the Waffenträger auf E100. However, the Waffenträger also has a 12.8 centimeter choice, or the with a, I believe that's a 6-round autoloader, which has an average of 560 alpha, or you can choose to use the 150mm, which lowers it to a 4-round autoloader, but with a 750 alpha damage. The Foch 50B has a 120 with 6 rounds of 400 alpha, and I believe the reload on it was quite I think it was around 20 or 30 seconds, so it's still better than the Waffenträger's 58 seconds, I believe, or 55 seconds if you have a really good crew. So it was a very good replacement. However, along with the tier 10, they ended up redoing the tier 8 and tier 9 tanks, giving the tier 8 a rework, and tier 9 so that the tier 9 also had a 4-round autoloader, while the tier 10 still remained with its 6 rounds, and the tier 8 got a rework with, I don't remember exactly, it did get reworked. So if you have any of the French tanks, just know that if you decide right now to get a head start on that, to go back down to the AMX 50 Foch, the tier 9 tank destroyer, and start grinding out experience on it, to prep yourself for the AMX 50 Foch B, as it will just basically be added on to the French tech tree. That is more than likely going to happen when they introduce that tank. Or, however, if you want to enjoy the tank grind, because the tier 8 and tier 9 are going to be reworked as they were for this update, you can stop yourself at the tier 8. But again, if you have the tier 10, I would just jump down to tier 9 or start bulking up on free experience so that you can get the tier 10 AMX 50 Foch B when it is released. Next, in the later part of the year, from November 13th of 2017, they introduced the Super Conqueror, and for us, this would be the third British heavy tank being introduced in the game, along with a few revisions to the British heavy line. In this case, they got introduced to the Super Conqueror. So for those of you who don't know about this tank, I can again dive into this in a completely different video, or just wait again until this is actually introduced, but I'll probably still do a video about it to go over some of the stats for console. if I were you guys, and again, if you want to get a head start, jump over on your Conqueror and start grinding out another crew, or getting a head start on bulking up your free experience to be able to unlock the brand new tier 10 Super Conqueror when it comes out later this year. Indy 9.21 released on November 16th of 2017. They introduced the new French heavy tanks. Now, if you don't know what these are, the current French heavy tanks that we have in the game are autoloaders. This took away the autoloading mechanic and gave the French tanks a competitive nature with more heavily armored frontal armor. Starting from the tier 7 AMX M4 45, you can jump up to the AMX 65T at tier 8. Going through each of its packages, again, this packaging system is not what we have on console, so keep that in mind that I can't tell you what packages we will have when the tank is released until it is actually given details. The tier 9, the AMX M451, and the tier 10, the AMX M454. Now, something to highlight here about the brand new tier 10 French heavy tank is that it actually had a choice of two different guns, a 120mm or a 130mm, with a 560 alpha, the 400 on the 120. Now that would be, it's going to be a little bit more interesting because currently I'm playing through the AMX 5120, and I grinded my way from the AMX M54, M445, and honestly, the tier 7 sucked. It felt horrible to grind through. And the AMX 5100 was a little bit better, and the 5120 is getting there. But quite frankly, I'm kind of just going through it trying to get to the 50B, as it is a great auto-loading tank. However, one of the big downfalls of the current French tanks is that the turrets on them are so weak, and they're so under armored when trading for being an autoloader, that you kind of trade health ineffectively. So they got rid of the autoloaders on these tanks. From the tier 8, 9, and 10, you get a bulk of frontal armor that with a single fire gun. So that's something to keep in mind. But again, you would have to start over from the tier 7. So the AMX M445 isn't one of your favorites. Try to make it one in addition to grind through, as you're going to have to gain to get up to this tank. You know what? It doesn't actually tell me how much experience you need. Nope, does not tell me exactly how much experience you need. I would say around, going up from tier 7 to tier 8, let's say about around 150 to 160, 150,000 experience would probably be overkill to it. So grind out to about 110,000 experience on the AMX M445 to get you at least a head start. If you want to go over and above that, if you decide you like that tank, get used to the playstyle for it. It does get better with armor on the tier 8, tier 9, and tier 10. And lastly, in 2017, probably the saddest thing to have happened is that the Death Star was finally replaced on PC. Now, it was replaced by the FV217 Badger, and I don't know, the British has a funny way of naming tanks, but nevertheless, we will not be getting a replacement for the Death Star. At least I hope that is not the case. Again, console has stated that they do not like removing tanks from the game. If they can, they just try to add it into the current game. Now, I like that idea, and I dislike it at the same time because I have decent crews, but that makes me kind of sad because I love the Tortoise, and I don't... This is going to be a slight upgrade to the Tortoise because it removes that 183mm, the biggest gun on any tank, excluding the T92 people. It's not a tank, it's an SPG. And giving it down to, I believe, the Badger keeps a 120mm. Am I right? What gun does this get? The Badger gets a 123mm gun with the alpha damage being 480 instead of the current Tortoise being 420. So it's a great improvement to see. The Death Star just doesn't fit in that line. Honestly, you go from having all this armor to being able to just one-shot tanks. I don't really question it because I like firing gold bars more than anybody else. Something to mention that I forgot, that I don't know why it wasn't brought up over this, is that in 920 or 921 they also I think that's 920, they also reworked the other British turreted tank destroyer, the FV 4005, and gave it a boost in all around. Now they did not increase the armor. Sorry, I don't I don't want to say the name. The S Barn definitely has its quirks, that huge alien-like head. However, that is it. I don't. They didn't buff the speed. It does carry more ammo, so is the Death Star. In this case, they did bump the ammo from 12 to, I believe, 18. However, the Death Star on the current version of their Death Star, or the 4005, was the Hesh rounds were nerfed, I believe, to limited to 1600 alpha, or was it, and they 16 or 1400 alpha, I don't remember exactly. But either way, in their case, they removed the Death Star and made it a special premium tier 10, and introduced the brand new tier 10 Badger. Now, if you don't know what the Badger is, it kind of looks like it's kind of like a better version to the SU-12254. Great frontal armor, decent side armor, and horrible rear armor. But the lower plate, I believe, was one of the main drawbacks of this. But if you went hull down, you could pretty much put that 123mm gun to work. As 480, this replaced the Tortoise as the highest DPM, or DPM, the king of DPM, by, I believe, what was it? By just a few points. I don't remember the exact number, but it did replace it by a little bit because of the alpha damage. So that is what you can expect throughout the year. Currently, we are sitting at the 9.17 version of tanks. So in 9.18, we can speculate that this will be the introduction of the the artillery revision. Whether or not we get this is still debatable. Again, I just want to point out that the developers have said they don't really feel like introducing the mechanic. However, a lot of players are still battling for that. In the 919, you have the improved equipment and directives, as well as the grand battles being introduced here. Or, I'm sorry, the ranked battles. I think grand battles was introduced from that. In the 920 version, you had the Chinese tank destroyers being introduced, along with the first Polish tank. Oh, never mind. Grand battles was introduced in 920 as well. In 921, or in 920, you also got the French tank destroyer reshuffle. So keep in mind that'll probably be around, I would say, the summer. The 921 Super Conqueror, or 920.1 Super Conqueror, will come probably towards the end of summer, so around maybe August or September. And the French heavy tanks being 9.21, and the FV217 Badger will probably come around the November holidays. 918 will probably come to us around the end of February or March. Keep that in mind, that'll probably be the next big update for tanks. However, again, this is all speculation because console does not take everything that PC does. They do tend to pick and choose what they do from that server version. This might not be one of those things, but it is one of the topics that I know a lot of players would like to see. So this is just a very deep dive into what you can expect into 2018 for World of Tanks console. I know this video is on the long side, but it is very in depth, as or very overviewed topics of what you can expect to come. Let me know what you guys think of it, or what you're looking forward to throughout the year. Which one of these server versions you're hoping that that mechanic for artillery being, or you're looking forward to the MX-50 full speed being introduced, the Chinese tank destroyers. How do you think the badge will play out on console? Do you like the fact that they got replaced the Death Star on PC? Hopefully we don't get it replaced, we actually just keep it. More than likely that will be the case. And what do you think the Super Conqueror will have effect to the new British heavies, or the rework of the British heavies as they were? Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like down below, and I'll catch you guys next time. Have a good night.